This is writing cross-platform PowerShell, and I'm Dave Carroll. I used to be active on Twitter and a couple other places now. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and GitHub. Not really active there anymore, but I'm starting to get more active. Anywhere I am, it's going to be the Dave Carroll. Just the Dave Carroll. My website is thedavecarroll.com. It's important to have your branding. This is one of the things that I could do that I could pretty much do all over, like all the socials that I was dealing with at the time. So first thing we want to thank the sponsors. If you haven't got out to one of their booths yet, you should do that. They're the reason why we can do what we do here. I know that most people probably use Chocolatey. Well, we use Chocolatey where I work at, and I think we had a PDQ server sometime back. But for sure, just go out and talk to the sponsors, and that way they'll keep on sponsoring us, and we can keep on coming here to this cool place. So who am I? I'm a DevOps engineer by day, PowerShell developer by night. I've contributed to a couple of the chapters in the conference book, volumes 2 and 3. I've also created a few modules like Posh events, Posh group policy, and if anybody remembered Bluebird PS, that was mine until it died. The PS temperature is I don't have it in the gallery, but it's a binary module, like a very simple binary module. It's usually a good way to kind of, if you wanted to see how one of those works, how they're put together. It's got like maybe 4 or 5 commands and like one major class. So I've been blogging about PowerShell for about 6 years. I've been automating with PowerShell for 15. And I've been solving IT problems for nearly 30 years. Sometimes that number just astounds me. It doesn't feel like that, but that's reality. So one of the things that I wish I'd had this talk before is Bluebird PS version 1. I shipped it. It was great. It did everything I wanted it to do on my machine. And then some guy named Jeff Hicks decided to install it and put in one of my first issues for that. So it's like, yeah, the env home is not a variable on like I guess on Windows, but $home was. So I didn't do enough testing, and I should have done that, but I didn't. I quickly released 011 to make him and everybody else happy. So we're talking today about cross-platform support. Before I really get into that, so who here runs PowerShell 7 on anything besides Windows? Okay, a good number. Anybody still running PowerShell Core? Good job. How about Windows PowerShell 5.1? Yeah, everybody's got to do that, right? So my daily driver is a Mac. I do predominantly everything through that. With the exception of any work that I have to do with Windows servers. We don't have SSH remoting or anything like that enabled. It's just straight up Windows, Windows PowerShell 5.1. And yeah, so I'm not super great on that, but I still try to write some of the things that I can run in both Windows PowerShell 5.1 and also PowerShell 7. So the big difference is, I'm sure we all know that Windows PowerShell 5.1 was written in .NET framework, and you can only run it on Windows. And the PowerShell 7, it's not PowerShell Core, it's PowerShell 7. It was built on .NET Core, and whenever .NET changed their name, so did PowerShell. So like .NET 5 and up, and it's cross-platform. It's able to run on anything that pretty much .NET is supported on. I think there might be some cases where it may not fully be supported on the others. And it also provides new features like the ternary operator, the question mark. So like where like all the other higher level languages also include that, but it took a while. And no conditionals, and also we now have the for each object pipe parallel to help speed things up. So we're talking about compatibility. You can use the use Windows PowerShell when you're importing a module. That's going to create an implicit remoting session for Windows PowerShell 5.1, and basically all of the commands are going to be going through that. If I remember correctly, I haven't actually used that much. Again, mostly I'm on a Mac. And then there's not all Windows-specific modules are going to be either available or even functional on Linux and macOS, and vice versa, just because of the differences in the platform. So Windows PowerShell 5.1 does have access to, obviously all of the .NET frameworks, and some of those modules could be supported in PowerShell 7 with modifications, maybe without modifications. So yeah, let's go to the next thing. So I wanted to see kind of like how many. This probably would have been a better place to ask, where you use, what do you use, like where you use PowerShell 7 and things like that. Just a second. So there's a Power BI that the Steve Lee produced several years ago, I think, and I just happened upon it. It's got basically like 4 pages. So like in the last 90 days, we're looking at 281 million sessions or million nodes that has run the PowerShell 7. That's probably not that surprising, but the 80 million kind of maybe is surprising for Linux. 18 for macOS. Also, the breakdown of PowerShell version itself, most people are actually still using 7.2. They haven't upgraded yet. Shame, shame. The PowerShell 7.4, 65 million nodes that are running that just in the last 90 days. Now, I don't know if this includes like all of the things that's in CI, CD, and pipelines and things like it. It does. So yeah, Sean was just confirming that it does include like all of that. So anything that you're running in, GitHub page, GitHub Actions, or any other CI, that's going to include those numbers. So if you wanted to actually get that link, you could take a picture of this. This will take you straight out to it. It's I think aka.ms/ and then ps GitHub BI. And if anybody, I can leave it up just for a little bit longer. Yep. I started using these last year, and I found that they were quite useful. Better than trying to write down a URL, isn't it? Especially if you're going to have a URL this long. So QR codes for the win. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the steps on how to install PowerShell 7 everywhere, because Microsoft did a good job, and by Microsoft I mean Sean Wheeler or somebody probably on his team, and he's in the audience. So like, yeah, you can install PowerShell 7 on Windows with MSI, Zip, the .NET Global tool, WinGet, and I've actually used Jeff Hicks' PS release tools quite a bit to do that. Only on Windows. I think it doesn't install the on any other platform. And then on Linux, apt-get, snap, and then if you're on Arch Linux, I think you got to do like an APK and some curl commands. And on my Mac, I just use brew pretty much the whole time to do the install. It's easy to update. Of course, you got to wait on the package maintainers with Homebrew before you can update install any updates. Again, I don't want to go basically read a web page for you guys. So this is not, by the way, WP 501 is not WordPerfect 501. This is, I think some of you guys got that. This is Windows PowerShell 5.1 versus PowerShell 7. So if you scan that, you'll just go out to Microsoft's documentation on the differences between those two. And so this one is the differences between PowerShell 7 on core PowerShell 7 on Windows versus any of the other platforms. I'll leave those up just for a couple of minutes. Pretty good. So the next thing we need to talk about is uniqueness. Uniqueness. I tried to say that. I messed it up on the pronunciation. Anyway, so yeah, if you're familiar with Linux, they usually have the hashtag pound symbol, tic-tac-toe, whatever you want to call it, / and then the shell that the script is written for. For PowerShell, if you're going to use it if you're going to create a file that you want to run without a PS1 extension, I think you need to include the hashtag exclamation mark, which I found out I guess was the magic number, is what Microsoft is calling it. I think back from the Linux days, it was called a shebang, whatever. So one thing about that is that second bullet point there, it will create a new process and run within that process. So typically, you would include that for scripts like maybe your primary script is a bash script, but you need to call some PowerShell from that, and then that script not having a PS1 extension, it'll spin up a brand new process for the execution of that, and you can't share between your script variables. You can't share between that and the others. Also, one of the things that I liked when I first started working with PowerShell 7 was that I could just type in ls to get a directory listing. I could type in cp, and a lot of the Linux commands that I was used to, they put in convenience aliases, and with PowerShell, actually that was PowerShell 5, Windows PowerShell, I think. Yeah. And with on Linux, on Unix platforms and Mac platform, they have removed the convenience aliases. So if you type ls, it's going to actually be ls from Linux and not an alias for get child item. And that I had a little point there to say that's another reason to have your full commands in your scripts and not using aliases. And then the next thing is we should talk about a case for case sensitivity. File names, when you're executing them on the Linux side, they have to be case sensitive. but tab completion is not case sensitive. And if you're not using tab completion, you're missing out on life. You're worrying about exactly what you need to type in. Tab completion will save you a ton of time, usually, and also will help you sleep at night. So the get help and the import module are special cases in the fact that they are case insensitive. And so with that, I want to thank you. And yeah, wait, are you kidding me? No. Yeah, actually, yes, I am kidding you. It's going to be demo time now. And showtime. Did I fool anybody? Anybody? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is start up VS Code Insider. That's when it's a green icon. And the first thing I want to talk about is the path and environment. One of the things, I had my mouse, but don't have no room for a mouse. The pathing is definitely something that you have to handle differently. Like if we were to just take this, PS module path split, and then the semicolon, let's see what it does. Starting Windows Terminal. Is that big enough for everybody? Yeah. Okay, so we do the split, and it works great. Okay, next. I've got Ubuntu on here through the Windows subsystem for Linux version 2. Which takes a little time to start. And then, oh, that didn't break it up at all, did it? Well, let's see about Windows PowerShell. Okay, obviously that worked. Okay, so looks like then Linux is going to use a different separator. And, oh, hang on. Yikes. I was flipping around too much. All right, so that looks good then. But do you want to go through? I think I've got it over here. Yeah. So let's just do this. Let's create a little simple test. If it's Windows, then it's that. If it's not, then it's going to be the other. And we'll do this here. And that split very nicely. And over here, that split very nicely. And over here, and that split horribly. Because obviously, when the PS edition of desktop does not have an is Windows. So, well, that's not exactly going to work. What's the thing? So maybe let's just kind of move it around. And this will likely work. Let me get this other part too. So that worked splendidly. that works splendidly, and and that worked quite well. Okay, but that's a bit of a mess, right? To have to go through all of that every time you just want to split a path. And so in comes the actual .NET accelerator for system IO path separator. So now this is going to work no matter where I run it, like magic. So one of the things is going to be a very common thing that I say is the .NET accelerator. Even though if you may not be a programmer or whatever, if you're writing any kind of code, you're really a developer. But using the accelerators are going to be so much easier if you're writing cross-platform PowerShell. So yeah, I mean, so let's kind of look at the next few separators here. So PowerShell 7 has got a directory separator directory separator, and I think that's how it works to be agnostic on which path whenever you're using, actually put it in a file path to go and get something. And then the volume separator. On this one, okay, so this is like everything is a slash. I could make a reference to Guns N' Roses, but I don't think I will. Besides that. And then pretty much the same thing with the Windows PowerShell as in PowerShell 7 on Windows. So again, we're going to be seeing a lot of the .NET accelerators in this. How's the lighting and all that, the size, everything is good? Okay, so I started this conversation about the $home, which I thought was like a special folder. And so like here are the special folders that I would assume would be in most Windows environments. We'll take a look. Yep, so that looks good. That's on Windows PowerShell. And that's on PowerShell 7 on Windows. And let's just, for grins and giggles, run that over here. So there's going to be a lot of nothing. So, home. So we could maybe use home. But that tells you now that you can't use any of the environment variables that you have available to you on Windows platforms on Ubuntu. So the thing that you can use is, well, let's just also see this environment home and see what that's about on here. So same thing. So for cross-platform, again, it's going to be far better to just maybe at the top of your profile or whatever to go ahead and set just a user profile, and you can even add it to environment variable as long as you're not clobbering any of the other. Like if like you couldn't do that on Windows, you'd have to call it something else besides user profile. So if we do that, and then we do user profile, that's easy peasy. And then we do that. User profile. Still the same thing, but now we have a common variable that we can use for the path. Okay. Let's see, what else? Yeah, and like, okay, application data and the local application data. We saw that, well, you'll see where this is kind of correlates to. Is this like thoroughly exciting, boring, or somewhere in between? Okay. So here we have on the Windows platform using PowerShell 7, app data, roaming, and local. And for Windows PowerShell, same thing, because it's the same platform. But we're going to see something different in the Unix side, the Ubuntu side, where now the application data is .config, and I think this might be, like, for sure, the configuration for PowerShell 7 lives in that .config folder, and I think the modules live in the .local share for Linux and Mac OS. Yes, I mean, you could add those to any variables you need, assign any environment variables if you wanted to use it, throughout. And let's maybe, has anybody ever written something that would just give you like a temporary file name, just like a random, bunch of characters and stuff? Well, the .NET accelerators have these already. So there's a path, there's a temp file name, which is going to be a file name inside the temp path folder, and then a random file name that you can put anywhere you want. And obviously, the temp path is going to be your user path app data local temp, and that's going to be the same for PowerShell 7 as well. Yeah. And a couple other things that you might want to use in your scripts, maybe just for identification for logging or whatever, is the OS version and the machine name. Of course, you can always run like host name, and you can get the same thing there. Clara is not valid. So OS and machine name, and I think host name actually works here too. So host name might be okay to use cross-platform, but I wouldn't. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and this, I don't know if the machine name is an object or a, just a string. Looks like a string. And of course, the same thing is here. This is going to be the exact same thing as the other. Did anybody have?
I was going to make a comment. There's on the EvoTech blog, there's an interesting post about the effect of get temp file name. Mm-hmm. Super useful command when you just need a real quick random file that's not going to collide with something. But the side effect is that it actually creates the file, whether you use it or not. Like, it's going to create this file. So if you call that method a lot, you're going to end up with a ton of files in your temp folder. So just be aware of that. It might make things slow if you accidentally generate a ton of temp files.
Yeah, so generate a ton of temp files and just fill up your disk, and then if your security is set so high where you can't log in, if your disk drive is full, then you're golden, right? Time to go home. But yeah, thanks for calling that out. That was Evotech blog post about the effects of the get temp file name. Do you know if it does the same like with the get random file name?
No,
So that just returns a string.
random file name is safe. It doesn't create anything. It only generates a file.
Okay, so the random file name only creates the name. The get temp file name actually creates the thing, even though you were just wanting a file name. Okay. Yes.
For the get random file name, will that always give a random extension at the end as well?
I think so. And let's. Okay, yeah, so there's no overloads for that. So you're going to get whatever's there. I was wondering if there was any overloads. So an overload lets you specify essentially parameters in your, for your either method or your static property, which I think this is, maybe. Yeah. So, that's it for special folders. Now for environment variables. So, everybody knows how to look at their environment variable. This is one way. And sorry, first time with tabs. Not really. So that's a lot different than what I'm seeing over here. Also, I don't see like there's a this PS Summit Demo 3. That guy's sitting out there, and that's actually a system level variable. So we'll see that when I run that over here as well on the PowerShell 7 on Windows. To set a variable, you can just set it any old way. This will work for pretty much all of them. I mean, it's going to work for all of them. And then I do this, and we see now there's a demo 1. This is session only, so it'll die if you don't do something to keep it around. And there we see the Summit Demo 1, and over here, and we see the Demo 1 and 2.
For Linux, is that also just session only?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you wanted to set it permanently for the current user, you could use the set environment variable. And if I look there, where did it go? Because I have not reloaded yet. So now let me just reload the Windows PowerShell, and hopefully that will be there when I do this. And we see the 2. And yeah, it's going to be the same thing for that. I'm not going to like restart for that. The other thing, if you wanted to have a set the variable for a machine, there's another command for that, and actually another enum that you have to use for that. But I'm not going to do that because it does require an elevated permissions, and I think so. There's more. I want to talk a little bit about the like importing some functions, and so if we do just this, and this was there we go. So I'm dot sourcing that, which I think it did import my module, my PSM1 module. Yeah. All right. So Git file encoding is something that is in that PSM1, and since we're here, we can just do that. So I'm going to do the Git file encoding and the path for this. This particular file is actually UTF-16 LE, I guess little Indian encoding, and the end of line is line feed. And if we were to check the Git line ending with the same thing, we'll see that that line feed is specific to Linux and Unix. Now, most of the time, I don't have to mess with that because VS Code is like kind of agnostic. It just does things for you. And yeah, so that's the engine. I know I kind of might be close to coming up on a little bit of some time, but I did want to just kind of show you like one way that you could, I've also got this uname. Let me just show you that real quick. So if we do get you, oh, I didn't, yeah, I did. All right, so this is actually using the command uname. This was a, no. This is a function that I wrote for one of the iron scripters. And I just kind of did a bunch of horrible stuff with it. And speaking of, like, what if I wanted to do like a computer, like on the Windows platforms, actually. Computer info. Oh, anybody know that you could do any command that is a git command? You can omit git. I wouldn't suggest doing it. It's just like a trick kind of thing.
There's a lot of problems with it.
Yeah.
It's also very slow. Yes.
Because it
has to exhaust all possibilities before it then falls back and tries with like an injected gas, so it's going to be very slow.
yeah, it's basically going through your entire path to see if that exists.
Right. Yeah, it's the last fallback, right? Try that with process.
Maybe later. Not going to try that with process. But let's say that you had a command that you know works in Windows, but you want something that's going to work in like Linux or Mac. You could set an alias for that command. Now, this is a horrible, very horrible example of that. The main reason why it's a horrible example is because the get computer info and the get uname commands, they don't have the same parameters, and they don't output the same thing. So anytime you decide to want to include something like this, and I'll give you a prime example of what I did. I had a module called Posterity DNS. It was a client for the Dyn managed DNS service. And in it, I had this, I wrote 2 commands, one for Windows and one for desktop edition and one for core edition. And I used this conditional to set an alias for the actual command that I was going to be using based on the platform. So this is a real cool workaround. But again, the parameters need to be identical for it to really be worthwhile. So if we were to do a compare between the core and this, and we look, so we see, besides the type for the method, all those are the same there, and we keep going down, and then all of the parameters are exactly the same, again, except for the type for that. And that's because the core didn't have like the web request method for the Microsoft PowerShell commands. And yeah, so that's that. Anybody have any questions on that? I'm kind of trying to speed things up to get to the end. This is the Posh Dyn DNS API is in my GitHub. It's an archived public repo. You can go out there and take a look to see how I did it. And mostly I did it because I wanted was the web commandlets between core and desktop, quite different, and I wanted to have some specific output. The other thing, I guess I'll get to, okay, so did anybody notice that my, whenever I start one of these up, and I start another one up, so all of these basically say, the logo, which is the PowerShell 741. Then I have that PowerShell profile script. This is what's actually running. And then that is running the multi-platform profile PS1 that I have in this folder. So every one of these is running the exact same, like there's just a stub that runs the one that is the multi-platform profile. And you can see like the Posh is a different version. The read line is a different version. Yeah, and I probably don't have time to go deep into that. But essentially, I just did a lot of checks. And because like the PS read line doesn't support like the prediction source and the prediction view style in Windows, I had to like do things special for that. So I think that's that for the demo, and I will get back to our regularly scheduled program. Oh yeah, you already know. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more about or seeing PowerShell run on Linux, here are some other presentations that are specific with Linux and PowerShell. So the next one's at 3:15 for James Brundage, tomorrow 2 for Stephen Judd, Wednesday 4:15 Sydney Smith, and so on. So with that, I want to say thank you. And before, like, one guy already left, but I'm going to go track him down. Do your feedback, please, for this. It was a pleasure to be able to present, and I hope you guys learned. I hope everybody learned something, and I know I did with the temp file. So.